So I went to see the Flash movie that came out recently. I know that there's been a lot of buzz behind the movie, notably because of its leading actor, Ezra Miller. In this video, I'm not going to be discussing much about him outside of the movie, and with that said, let's dive into the Flash movie. I'm going to start with the section that is spoiler free, then I'll make it clear when I'm going into the movie in more detail. So let's start off with an overview of the story from IMDb. The Flash is about Barry Allen using his super speed to change the past, but his attempt to save his family creates a world without superheroes, forcing him to race for his life in order to save the future. Overall, I enjoyed the Flash movie. Although plots that involve time travel pretty much always struggle with the internal logic behind it, I think that the plot made sense for the most part, at least when you think about it as an adaptation of the Flashpoint paradox. There were a few moments where the CGI didn't look great, but for the most part, I liked the visuals and the creativity of the scenes that were obviously CGI and meant to be CGI. Also, with the Flash being one of the more popular members of the Justice League, I'm really surprised that this is the first live-action solo movie that we have about the Flash. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next after this. If you're a fan of the DC superheroes or comic books in general, I definitely recommend watching The Flash. Now that I've given a general overview about the movie, I'm going to go into spoiler territory, so if you don't want the movie to be spoiled, this is your chance to hop off the video. Alright, so here we go. Right off the bat, I really wish that Ezra Miller's off-the-screen persona was different. Knowing some of the controversy behind him colored how I was watching the movie. However, I think he played his character well. Actually, I think he played both of his characters well. And for those of you who don't know, Barry Allen went back in time in an attempt to save his mom from being killed, and when he did that, he met a younger version of himself who was also played by Ezra Miller. While he was able to save his mom, there are some unexpected events that happen. He eventually sees a news report about General Zod attacking the planet, and he realizes that there aren't any metahumans in that timeline that can stop him. However, the original Barry and the young Barry realize that Bruce Wayne, who's played by Michael Keaton, could be available to help. Together, they all eventually hatch a plan to find Superman and break him out of the prison that he's stuck in. Throughout much of the film, the original Flash is powerless, but eventually he's able to regain his powers before the final fight. And here's the kicker. They actually end up saving Supergirl, who's the cousin of Clark Kent. In that vein, I think that the actress, Sasha Calle, did really well in the role. She seemed to embody that earnest Kryptonian vibe that I would expect from the character. Although there were a few times where she would hit the enemies and it felt a little bit too weightless, as if she were playing a character in a video game. But to be fair, Supergirl is incredibly strong. I mentioned Michael Keaton's Batman earlier, and let me just say, as somebody who grew up watching Keaton as Batman, it really was fun to see him reprising his role. Keaton was one of the highlights of the movie. It really looked like he was having some fun, and nearly all of the scenes that he was in looked great. But there was a cringy scene whenever he repeated some dialogue from the first movie, but overall I think that he was a really great addition to the movie. I do wish that Ben Affleck's Batman was still a higher priority. To me, he's still the best Batman and I loved his combat, but he wasn't in the film for that much for some reason. We also had a cameo from Wonder Woman, but she was barely in the movie for like literally maybe a couple of minutes, if that. So it would have been nice to see her in the movie a bit more. Throughout the movie, some of the CGI looked a little weird. The two things that stood out to me the most were the weird looking babies that were falling out of this building earlier in the movie. And the bigger thing to me was the odd placement of General Zod, who was played by Michael Shannon. His head looked really weird in the helmet, and he just kind of looked like a floating head in the suit. The main themes that were covered in the Flash movie were of grief and acceptance. I think that they handled that pretty well. Toward the end of the movie, the original Barry came to the realization that some problems just don't have a solution, and he tried to teach the younger version of himself that, but he just had a really hard time breaking through. Eventually, the original Flash was able to leave that timeline and seemingly go back to his true timeline. However, we eventually find out that Bruce Wayne is actually played by George Clooney now, which is kind of funny. To me, it did seem a little bit weird, like it kind of undercut the tone of the movie because I really wanted it to be a bit more settled. But I do say that it opened up the door to more multiverse related movies down the road. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next. Let me know in the comments if you plan to watch The Flash or if you're just gonna sit this one out. Thanks for watching.